The blood system serves as the body's essential lifeline, performing a variety of vital functions that sustain life. Its primary role is distribution. Blood delivers oxygen, O2, and nutrients to cells throughout the body, transports metabolic wastes like carbonic acid to the lungs and kidneys for elimination, and carries hormones from endocrine organs to their target destinations. Beyond distribution, blood is key to regulating our internal environment. It absorbs and distributes heat to help maintain body temperature, balances fluid volume within the circulatory system, and stabilizes pH through buffers like carbonic acid. Lastly, blood is a crucial defender, offering protection against blood loss through plasma proteins and platelets, which initiate clot formation. It also shields us from infections, as plasma carries antibodies, complement proteins, and white blood cells, WBCs, that act as our defense against foreign invaders. In this video, we'll explore these essential functions and see how blood supports and protects our bodies every moment. Blood is made up of various formed elements, collectively known as blood cells, which each serve vital functions. These cells form primarily in red bone marrow through a process called hematopoiesis. Blood itself is classified as a connective tissue because it consists of cells and cell fragments suspended within a liquid matrix called plasma. The main components of these formed elements are red blood cells, erythrocytes, white blood cells, leukocytes, and platelets, thrombocytes. Erythrocytes transport oxygen, O2, from the lungs to body tissues and carry carbon dioxide, CO2, back to the lungs for exhalation. Leukocytes act as the body's defense, protecting against infections and foreign invaders. Thrombocytes, or cell fragments, play a critical role in clot formation, helping to prevent blood loss after an injury. Together, these components keep the body nourished, defended, and stable. Blood volume varies depending on several factors, including body size, fluid concentration, electrolyte levels, and the amount of adipose tissue. Generally, individuals with more adipose tissue have a higher blood volume. Blood accounts for about 8% of a person's body weight and typically ranges from 5 to 6 liters in males and 4 to 5 liters in females. Blood also maintains a slightly alkaline pH between 7.35 and 7.45, which is essential for proper physiological function. The composition of blood is measured through a hematocrit, which represents the proportion of different elements within blood. Approximately 55% of blood is plasma, the liquid component that transports nutrients, hormones, and waste products. The buffy coat, a thin layer composed of white blood cells and platelets, makes up about 1% of the total blood volume and plays a critical role in immune defense and clotting. Finally, red blood cells, responsible for oxygen transport, make up around 45% of blood volume. Together, these elements create a balanced and efficient system that meets the body's complex needs. Each RBC is composed of about 1/3 hemoglobin, the protein that binds and carries oxygen. Hemoglobin exists in two forms: oxyhemoglobin, which is bright red when bound to oxygen, and deoxyhemoglobin, a darker red when oxygen is released. Erythrocytes lack nuclei and mitochondria, allowing them to focus solely on oxygen transport without consuming any of it. The biconcave shape of RBCs enhances their surface area, ensuring hemoglobin molecules are close to the cell membrane for efficient gas exchange. Hemoglobin's structure is essential to RBC function. Each molecule consists of 4 protein globin chains, 2 alpha and 2 beta chains, each bound to a heme pigment. A single iron atom in each heme binds oxygen, allowing one RBC to carry roughly 250 million hemoglobin molecules, maximizing oxygen transport throughout the body. Hemoglobin also demonstrates cooperative binding, meaning it binds oxygen more readily once it has at least one oxygen molecule attached, which stabilizes its binding capacity. Hemoglobin is crucial for gas transport. In the lungs, it binds to oxygen, O2, forming oxyhemoglobin, which gives blood its bright ruby red color. When blood reaches tissues, oxygen is released, and hemoglobin becomes deoxyhemoglobin, reduced hemoglobin, which appears dark red. In tissues, hemoglobin also binds carbon dioxide, CO2, forming carbaminohemoglobin, which carries about 20% of CO2 back to the lungs for exhalation. Carboxyhemoglobin forms when hemoglobin binds to carbon monoxide, CO. Hemoglobin has a greater affinity for CO than for oxygen, O2, which prevents oxygen from binding and being transported. Since CO cannot be used to produce ATP, this leads to a lack of oxygen in tissues. If not removed from the environment, this can ultimately result in death. Erythropoiesis is the process of forming red blood cells, RBCs. When blood oxygen levels are low, the kidneys and liver release erythropoietin, EPO, a hormone that stimulates RBC production in the bone marrow. This process operates through negative feedback, meaning that as RBC production increases, blood oxygen levels rise, which then reduces EPO release. Darbepoetin alpha is a medication that can stimulate the bone marrow to increase RBC production. The newly formed RBCs are initially released into the bloodstream as reticulocytes, which mature into erythrocytes. The regulation of erythropoiesis is crucial for maintaining balance. Too few RBCs result in tissue hypoxia, lack of oxygen, while too many RBCs increase blood viscosity, which can cause complications. The balance between RBC production and destruction relies on hormonal controls and adequate supplies of iron, amino acids, and vitamins. Erythropoiesis is regulated by a negative feedback loop that helps maintain oxygen balance in the body. Step 1. The process begins when hypoxia, or low blood oxygen levels, occurs. Hypoxia can be caused by a decrease in RBC count, a decrease in hemoglobin, or a decrease in oxygen availability. Step 2. In response, the kidneys, and to a smaller extent the liver, release erythropoietin, EPO. Step 3. This hormone stimulates the red bone marrow to increase RBC production. Step 4. As erythropoiesis enhances, more RBCs are produced and released into the bloodstream. Step 5. The oxygen-carrying ability of the blood increases, restoring normal oxygen levels throughout the body, completing the negative feedback loop. Red blood cells, RBCs, have a life cycle of about 120 days. Due to their lack of a nucleus, they cannot repair any damage they sustain. As they age, old RBCs are broken down in the spleen and liver by macrophages. During this process, hemoglobin is broken down into bilirubin, which is then transported to the liver and becomes part of bile. The iron from hemoglobin is also recycled, returning to the bone marrow where it is reused for the production of new RBCs. Bilirubin, a byproduct of hemoglobin breakdown, is crucial in the process. After RBCs are destroyed and hemoglobin is broken down into its components, bilirubin is produced and excreted by the liver. It gives bile its characteristic yellow color and is eventually eliminated from the body in the stool. Anemia is a condition with over 400 types, each with different causes and effects on the body. Aplastic anemia occurs when the bone marrow cannot produce enough new blood cells, often due to exposure to chemicals, radiation, or genetic factors. Hemolytic anemia is when red blood cells, RBCs, are destroyed faster than they can be produced, leading to a shortage of healthy RBCs. One type of hemolytic anemia is sickle cell anemia, a recessive genetic disorder. This condition causes the bone marrow to produce abnormally shaped RBCs, which can lead to hemolytic anemia. A normal erythrocyte has a normal amino acid sequence in the beta chain of hemoglobin, but in sickle cell anemia, a single amino acid change in this chain causes the RBCs to sickle, which makes them less effective in transporting oxygen and more prone to destruction. Iron deficiency anemia occurs when there is not enough iron to produce hemoglobin, resulting in pale RBCs, hypochromic anemia. Pernicious anemia is caused by a lack of vitamin B12, which leads to excess immature RBCs with large sizes and low hemoglobin content, also resulting in hypochromic anemia. Thalassemia is a genetic disorder where defective hemoglobin leads to short-lived RBCs, which can sometimes cause hemolytic anemia. Each type of anemia affects the body in different ways, but they all lead to reduced oxygen-carrying capacity of the blood, causing fatigue and other related symptoms. In this video, you learned about blood's essential functions: delivering oxygen, removing waste, defending against infections, and more. We explored the roles of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, how blood cells are produced, and how conditions like anemia impact the body. If you enjoyed this video, stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive deeper into the fascinating world of the blood system. Thanks for watching.